Welcome to Bold Talk series where creativity, leadership, ideas, innovation come together. My name is Epi Ludvik, and today I have a privilege to have a short one-on-one conversation with Tony Fish, a strategic sense maker, author, founder, and visiting fellow at Henley Business School. Tony, great seeing you. Welcome to our Bold Talk series. How are you?
Good morning, Epi. I'm very well this morning. Thank you very much. Enjoying a few spring days as we come into a bit of a change. The rain has stopped. The sun has come out. God, it makes such a
Yeah.
difference.
March is it's a beautiful month. Everybody looks forward to it. I wish people will keep to their promises what they made during the New Year's resolutions, right? I wonder like how many of those people will keep the resolutions, right?
So I'm an odd one. I don't make New Year's resolutions. I just have a really simple view. Look, if you need to change something, just do it. Just do it on the day you decide. Why
That's
you
it.
have to wait a whole year to then fail again? It's like, yeah, wake up in the morning and do it.
The power is in the now.
Yes.
So Tony, you spent 3 decades navigating uncertainty, certainly across multiple technology shifts. What was that first moment in your career when you realized that the old strategic playbooks no longer worked and that something deeper was breaking down?
In truth, and I probably only came to realize this fairly recently, actually. So when I was way back when we were doing education and things, and I was actually at one of the oldest business schools reading my MBA, and I wrote my thesis, my final thesis to get the award, and I wrote my thesis that the environment was a board issue, and basically I got the result back from my thesis, and they basically said you failed your MBA. And we then had to go into a whole process of discussion and the viva and everything else. And eventually they begrudgingly gave me a pass. But it was a seminal moment where effectively they had taught us that, the environment was important. And I wrote my whole thesis that actually it was a board issue, and this is why it's a board issue. And who had an institution who basically turned around and said, no, it's not a board issue. And actually they wrote to me as part of the process, and they said, it will never be a board issue. And it's like, and I was really stunned. This is 1990, this is mid 90s. So yes, the reality is lots of business models were there, but there was really no acceptance. And I think that was probably one of the first times when you could see something was so obvious, yet the institution just absolutely refused it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, huh? It's have that changed a lot since then or
So, and I, the reality is for some people who are living the reality of climate change now, yes, because it's pretty devastating. The reality is that some of people, no matter how much evidence and data you've got, will absolutely refute it anyway and just put it down. So it's become divisional and divisive as a political tool apart from anything else. But in terms of it, is it a board issue? I still see literally like political lines. You see some people absolutely embrace it, completely understand it, why we need to be sustainable, what the impact will be on their business and their profits and their reporting and their compliance and everything else. And some people just have zero interest in it at all, but they just want to maximize for effectively fiduciary duty and shareholder return. So it's there, but there is still, and unsurprisingly, it's we're 30 years into something, and it takes generations to change. People kind of like go, oh, we've mentioned it once, it should be done. It's like, no, these journeys are long.
yeah. I just wonder because, what we've seen and we still see is that, lots of the problems are being presented from a top, right? And these are just like a handful of individuals. And now we're taking that the wholesale and we say, okay, well, this is the problem. But wait a minute. Did we gone to as far as asking someone who's really not connected, has no interest at all to this problem, but hear from him? And I think this is also one thing that I've been trying in my life with crowdsourcing, like bringing not from a top, but bringing from a bottom up, like really surface that. And so I think there's still we need to really think along how the problems are being presented, right? So
Yeah, and the reality is what you hit there, Epi, is the whole, in a way, that the whole problem around anthropology. The study of tiny groups. You get three people together and you look for a pattern. And the classic of this, which sometimes gets quoted was the work Nokia did way back in the day, and they had a piece of evidence that smartphones were absolutely going to dominate. And all of the anthropology said smartphones are the route ahead. All the evidence was there, all the reports were there, and it was presented to the board. And the board took the top-down view of we're selling, the 3110. It's doing tremendously well. We have a barrier to entry by doing all this deal with the operators. We're not going to change, and they didn't. And as they say, history shows what's happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. Reality is, I think people do know what's happening in the noise. And
Yeah.
you can call it anthropology. There is this gut sense.
Yeah.
And, trying to raise and surface that is exactly what you try to do, which I think is brilliant.
Yeah. Now, Tony, before you became known as strategic sense maker, you were a serial entrepreneur building in real markets with real consequences. What early failure of a hard lesson shaped how you think about risk and decision making?
Probably falling out of trees when I was very young. I don't know. I've always got some great stories, and today is an anniversary of my dad dying. So I'll probably do a story from him rather than from a story from me. And he always used to come up with a wonderful phrase, which is never let the facts get in the way of a good story. So this is a good story, and it might not have particularly a number of great facts, but it is actually true. And you look at risk and how you take risks. So my dad was advised many moons ago, this is where TVs, had big ray tubes as opposed to flat screens. And somebody had told him that on very, very old TVs, these are things that were made back in the 40s, 50s and 60s, you could cut away the front of the CRT and basically take out the X-ray screen, which was grounded. Because basically all CRTs were X-ray machines. So you just had to have a piece in front of them to prevent you dying from X-rays. But you could take the screen out and you could create your own X-ray machine at home. So my dad bought this really, really, really old TV. We went out to the rockery with a chisel and a hammer, and I must have been 7 or 8. Anyway, the TV that we managed to purchase when he started, basically he asked me to do it as well, with a hammer and a chisel taking off the front of a CRT. So obviously it imploded. Plain glass went everywhere. And how we survived to this day is probably quite instrumental. I had blood running down my face from sliding guts. There was inch pieces bedded into the piece behind me. And my mum came out and she was a bit cross with my dad. And, my dad had a bit of a laugh about it afterwards. And it was that thing that, if you don't take some risk, you'll never learn. And I think he installed in me that, you just got to keep going. And we went out and we found another one, and we actually did create an X-ray machine. How we're probably still alive today from some of the things that we did always amazes me. But I think it's this act, you have to take risk. And yes, and I'm going to use another quick one if I can.
Yeah, please.
So Ben Youngs, who is a phenomenal English rugby player, has just done a BBC documentary on head injuries in sport, particularly around rugby. And it's fascinating because most people, in the piece he says, is that even though there is risk in sport, and rugby has a lot of risks in sport, actually all the players would still play it. And because there's something way bigger than anything else that happens within that environment. And that's why. So I think we've lost what risk is and how to take risk. Yet some of the sports people, and you look at the Winter Olympics and some of the risks some of those downhill athletes decided to take to try and win the medal. And you go, yeah, that's an understanding of risk. And I just feel sometimes in business, we pretend we understand what risk is.
Yeah. And certainly the education system doesn't really help.
Let's not go there. Let's skip that one. That's going to be a quagmire.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, Tony, through your work on decision making in uncertain times, what did writing the book force you to confront about your own instincts when the stakes are irreversible?
The book there is it kind of like is a lockdown book. So it's one of these things I was pretending to write before lockdown. Obviously, lockdown did 2 projects. One is build the barn that you're now seeing me sit in, and the second one was to finish the book. I suppose I'd been building a series of frameworks, which is what the book is about. It's about 10 frameworks about how somebody like myself, who's a neuro minority, comes to board meetings and sees the world differently than neurotypical people. So a lot of boards are filled with neurotypical people, and there's nothing wrong with that. And being a neurodiverse individual, I quite often struggled with the structures that they presented and frameworks. So I wrote the book as, this is how I come to board meetings. These are the frameworks I use at looking at decision making. So it's not a book of saying, use these frameworks and everything will be okay. It's a book of saying, these are different frameworks which might help you see the same situation slightly differently. And therefore, they're designed to expand the thinking, not to contract the thinking. Now, it's not there's a right or wrong to this. It is about saying the way we make better decisions is making sure we don't shut down conversations, we expand conversations. But we shouldn't expand conversations so much that we never stop talking. But you've got to have enough of a conversation where you realize that actually, effectively, the risk that we're about to take is worth taking.
Yeah, very well said. And that, like, also the going back to the one of the things in terms of one of central tension you explore is how physical scarcity shaped human behavior. That's one of the things that I've talked with you before we got on this podcast, while virtual abundance is reshaping it. And how do leaders misunderstand this shift when they move from managing atoms to managing symbols?
Yeah. So I've been writing a fair amount about this fairly recently, which is that the system itself can't see the system. So the frame of a picture can't see the picture. The other analogy they use is, which is one I use obviously, which is the fish. The last thing the fish will ever notice is the water. And we've trained management and management thinking to do these 8 things and you're going to be okay. And the classic of this is, the seven habits of successful people. And actually the data behind it's complete rubbish. And, what it says was, here are some things, but it doesn't say you have to follow them. And these are the really interesting parts. What it says is that if you happen to have these 7 habits, you may become a great leader, not you will become a great leader. And actually what you need to do is a word I'm using now, which is called consurgence, which is where if you tend to these conditions, there is a good likelihood that you will be able to do X, Y, and Z, but there's no guarantee. And this is the difference I think lots of leaders have fallen into the trap of. If we do X, Y, and Z, we will get this outcome. And that's a lie and an untruth. And yet every marketing position email that drops into your inbox today where somebody's trying to sell you, which is follow this strategy and it's going to be okay. Follow these 5 points and suddenly your SEO is going to work. Follow these 5 things and your tech talk's going to be successful. And that is a complete lie. It says these are the conditions which you need to make work, but there's no guarantee of success if you do them. And that's what people don't like, is that even if you do something, it might not be successful. You can work for 10,000 hours and master something. It doesn't mean you're going to be successful. But if you don't do it, the chances are that success may not follow. Yet everybody wants the will if you've done something. Work hard and you will be successful. It's a complete lie. Some people are successful by doing nothing. Some people are successful having worked really hard. Working hard is not the guarantee. It is one of the things that may, as a condition, make it more likely. And this is the leadership problem. We've turned everything that could be likely and probable and everything else into follow this as a dictatorship, and basically it's going to be successful. It's basically complete untruth, but it sells. That's the thing. People want to buy it because they want to believe it.
Well, I heard, like you mentioned Nokia, right? I heard the CEO of Nokia, he said, we did everything right and we failed.
Yeah, Kodak would probably say the same. World leaders will say the same.
So
even if you do the right things, there's no guarantee it will lead to success. And therein lies a lot of problems. People believe that if you do these certain things, you will be successful. And that is a lie. And that's what we have to address, is actually you can do all of these things, but that doesn't guarantee the outcome.
Yeah. The power is in the actions for sure. And that's the formula that you need to follow. But the guarantees are not because of you doing X, Y, Z, you're guaranteed to make it happen.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And unfortunately, when the environment, we live in times of uncertainty, so all of the rigor that you put in doesn't absolutely guarantee that it'll be success. In fact, it's the probability is actually reduced. And the more you follow the old patterns of doing it, do these 5 things, the chances are actually you aren't tendering to the conditions that are needed today to to give you the probability of more success or reducing risk or making the right decision.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I
old
mean, like,
frameworks.
I just see, like, for example, the other day I saw it, and this was about Anthropic coming up, like, which of the jobs are going to be
Oh,
pretty
yeah,
much replaced, right? And you look at, for example, like, okay, well, here's a guy who's just about to graduate.
yeah, yeah,
He did
yeah,
everything right by playbook, showed up,
yep.
right?
Yeah, would I be taking some of the classic degrees? No, I absolutely wouldn't. Yeah, would I be following going, as you say, going down law, accounting, business, all those things? I'll be really questioning it. I'll be
Yeah,
really questioning if that's a good idea. Now, are the parents getting the right information and going, well, that looked like the right choice? It's like, yeah, but actually, yeah, we are living in a very, very strange world. And the reality is, again, something I've been writing about, the student level of debt is astronomical. And that actually therefore suppresses the ability for them to buy housing, which then changes the market of getting to housing, which then changes everything else.
100%. Now, Tony, you're involved in radically different ventures, from housing as a subscription to grassroots sports platforms. What have these companies taught you about designing systems that survive complexity rather than trying to control it?
We don't. So actually, in your question is the answer. We don't design the systems to do that. We design systems to be incredibly flexible. And, one of that is in the grassroots sports club we do, which is about giving back. The whole idea of that as a company is to provide sports kits to kids and adults at as cheap a possible price as possible, because then they can invest the rest of the money actually in the playing fields and actually in the sports arena, and not just spend all their money basically putting kits on which last a season quite often. So how do we make that as basically as cost effective as possible? Because then if we tend to those conditions, basically we can allow sports clubs to thrive. And our whole thing is sports are so important to well-being and community that actually the more you can encourage that by reducing the costs they have to spend out and actually allow them to invest into other bits, fantastic. Therefore we need to tend conditions which are not about us optimizing for our own ineffectiveness, but us optimizing for effectively them to be able to be successful. Which is, I know it's a subtle change, but it's called, it's this thing around convergence. It's tendering to the conditions which allow success to potentially come, but not by optimizing for effectively cost. And I know it sounds a bit weird, but actually when you start to change the mindset, actually you change the whole proposition.
Yeah. Uh, Great way to put it, Tony. And this is a short format conversation, bold talks. I wish we can have an hour to go over this. There's a lot to talk about this, especially about the book and the things that you've been writing. Uh, I'd like to ask this to all my guests about the word bold. What does that mean to you personally?
So, there's a question. So I'm part of a small group of people. One of the things we've been doing is what happens when AI is bold? What happens when AI is courageous? What happens when AI is curious? And we did the piece on bold, and I was fascinating. And and I think it's a great question to ask, because you actually get this incredible variety of what people believe bold is. And some people do it incredibly simply. And when we were talking about this as the group, and it was interesting to hear people's perceptions. And yeah, what do I believe bold is? I haven't got a clue, because actually it's so contextually aware, as is being curious, as is being courageous, as is being strong. And strong is not being strength. It's actually part of character, and bold is being a part of the character and knowing when to be bold and when not to be bold. And so if anything, I would say, to me, what bold means is actually knowing when not to be bold.
Yeah. That's very interesting. Knowing when not to be bold, that's also a bold too, which is really amazing, because I get this question to everyone, and I get very different takes from everybody, and I think this is what really the beauty of this life. We have
Yeah.
all this, different thinking. We're made differently, and so it's a beautiful thing to be part of it. Tony, so great to have you. Looking forward to reconnecting again with you again. Hopefully, I'll come and visit you over there in your barn, and we'll do some physical manual work
Oh,
together.
happy days. Love to.
Sure.
Come. Yeah, you can come play with the 3D printer, the CNC machines. Obviously, I've got a wood cutting shop next door as well. We got the
Amazing.
lathes. We got, yeah, let's make stuff. Love it.
Let's do it. Awesome. Great seeing you. Always be great and always be bold. Take care, Tony.
Be bold.
Bye bye.